in this week we expect to reach some of local laws and may discuss local laws in terms of legal research. So how does it affect actually when we address kind of a public challenges, or consider, for example, the school shootings in the United States. So I'll let you some ideas on that point later in this week, the Thursday perhaps. One article I would like to recommend to review what actually the article was titled The Legal Context of School Violence and Effectiveness of Federal, State and Local Law Enforcement Efforts to Reduce Gun Violence in Schools. It was also by Richard Redding, now serving law school of Villanova University Law School. And the article provided empirical evidence about the statistics and what the media coverage and press statement of press release and the views and opinions from the branches of government. So quite empirical to explore the backdrop about legal response. And we also identified two significant federal statute which was enacted in 1999, so quite the year before new millennium year. And the author's point is to address the need of specific response. So local response would be more effective in dealings. We have federal laws, but as also pointed out, we have scanty of prosecutions, which triggers the juvenile gun crimes. In fair context of contrast, about thousands of prosecutions have been statistically charted, reported as and involving state government action. So how do you say it operative through the challenges of youth violence deaths? So they also describe in manner of contrast between rural schools, suburban schools, and inner city schools. So the psychological and sociological element would differ in those groups. So the remedies could be particularized in response with the elements the students would actually expose in gun crimes. Handguns, shotguns, and rifles would be used. The state laws and federal laws have been collective to work against kind of a national trauma, often actually impose griefs and deep anguishes. So you will know many scenes that occasionally reported in TV news on this. So the author has actually espoused the scope of scams quite extended, as you see in the printout. federal laws and state laws, and also discuss the civil liability, a new paradigm. For example, negligence per se theory could be applied to the parents or school authorities. So we consider vicarious liability in that purview. However, the operation of vicarious liability often be narrowly shaped as a matter of common law. So we have many difficulties in invoking vicarious liability. And negligence per se surely also has a limited ambit in effect. And what are negligent entrustment or negligent access? The kind of new theory could be generated by court authority. So please link the kind of discussions to the topic of this week. So court could be more suited agency by applying a local context of justice. So particularities and specificities could be addressed more adequately by court authority, of course, state court or city court, municipal court, a juvenile, even juvenile disciplinary tribunal would be in concern in his point. And how do you consider the measures which should be initiated by school authority? So he may suggest a metal detector as indispensable to monitor and prevent against gun crimes by youth students. And we also suppose if the effect of alternative schools to counteract the kind of delinquencies of a juvenile or youths. So the kind of argument would be visited shortly to respond with our class purpose this week. And also we have one other article. So please keep watching continuously of the videotape lecture in weeks. And in this class, I would create some background understanding to facilitate your approach and comprehension of a common law system. In that case, you will encounter many words: a juvenile homicide, rate of a juvenile crime. So in this class, I will have some paragraphs to portray the criminal law in American legal system in any imagery, what kind of, it's actually one page with several paragraphs, so it should be short. On page 120, homicide is frequently defined as the killing of a human being by another. Homicide may be unlawful or lawful, felonious or non-felonious, intentional or unintentional. Non-felonious homicide is killing a human being with legal justification. So in some cases, we can identify a weaker context of a homicide, which should be unintentional. The intentional misconduct or delinquency or crime is one important concept in addressing the challenges of a youth juvenile as a matter of common law. So the vicarious liability would be structured to operate in stack of a case laws and precedents. The intentional emotion of distress by users would bring automatic vicarious liability on behalf of the parents of that perpetrator. So the kind of concept is important in making a distinction about different approaches in common law. So my point is that homicide is most comprehensive concept and terms which encompasses types of killings. Ellen and John Cleary and the two children were sound asleep when John was awakened by footsteps on the first floor of the house. After awakening his wife and telling her to call the police, John took his hunting rifle out of the closet, loaded it, and silently crept down the stairs. So it is not infrequent. We see in American familyhood, they tend to possess guns, rifles. Most obvious reason to justify the possession of ownership would arise from self-defense. And actually, the Constitution of the United States has Second Amendment rights to bear arms, so militia. So that could be one impediment in eradicating gun controls, according to some critics or others. So constitutional issues entangled. And the American Republic has experienced militia, and you may well know the historic status of independence war, and kind of ideas borrowed from James II, and actually the struggle between monarchy and parliamentary democracy, kind of new ethos and compassion from abusive monarch has long been charming. So the possession of guns is legitimate in many senses, and that classic provision could not be altered and still extant, with the comma in some cases bringing a different effect of interpretations. So we have some simple situation involving homicide may have some reflections. Upon finding the burglar, John turned on the light, told him to drop everything, and the police would be there in a few minutes. The gun-wielding burglar shot the lights out and also shot John in the shoulder. John fired the rifle and hit the burglar between the eyes, killing him. This would be considered justifiable homicide because John acted in self-defense in returning the burglar's fire after first trying to handle the situation without the use of deadly weapon. So weapon of offenses are highly routine, so it is unfortunate actually. If John found the burglar in the dark with the intruder's back facing him and shot the burglar with his rifle without saying anything, Jones Act would not be viewed as justified for homicide because he would have made no attempt to deal with the problem without using the deadly weapon. Deadly force may be used to stop a crime only when there is no reasonable alternative available. So this situation has also been challenged in the courtroom of the Republic of Korea. So how do we understand the elements and limitations in relation with the self-defense? Upon a week ago, you experienced some of newspaper stories where somebody who is a victim of burglary at night time, and of course a trespass of his house has applied excessive force to revenge the intruders, the trespassers who has broke into his house with the intent to steal property or assets. So the court sentenced the real terms of imprisonment. No probation was attached. No mitigating context of penalty or allowed to the perpetrator, in this case the owner of the house and occupant, of course. So the court found it excessive. But how do you consider his fright and fear, since it is at night time? So the point of news story would pertain to that version. So it may be excessive. How do you consider?